Well, hey, and thanks for joining me for another episode of the Full Frontal Living podcast. If you're watching this on video, you'll notice I am not in my regular home environment. I am still traveling. I am now in San Sebastian, Spain, after spending a week in varying parts of Morocco, which was amazing. And today, today's episode is kind of going to be a cluster of a bunch of different lessons, some things that I just want to share with you, and hopefully some powerful lessons and perspectives that you can take for yourself. In last week's episode, I shared something that shook out for me at the end of the Camino, an experience I had that really impacted me in the best way possible for my own personal healing. And if you've been following along for a while, you know that this year has been a year of redemption for me, a year of deep healing, a year of really looking at things that matter in my life and new perspectives and stepping into, dreams that I once held at arm's length. And this all is on the heels of some pretty gnarly stuff happening in my personal life. And it's just such a reminder that we need contrast in this world. And sometimes the universe, it doesn't always give us what we want, but it always gives us what we need in order to move us. And most of us don't do these kind of deep self audits and ask ourselves these hard questions if we're not pushed into it, if that pain doesn't reach a place of us needing to pay attention to it. So there's an acronym for PAIN, which is pay attention inward now. And that's really what I've been given the opportunity. So I wrote out a whole bunch of lessons from the Camino, and today I wanted to kind of touch on a few of them, and some in particular that have really been coming up in my one-to-one coaching calls. So this trip has also been an opportunity for me to try this whole nomadic lifestyle. Do I actually like working on the road, or do I want to be able to just go on the road and be on vacation and not have to work? But the truth is, I love my work so much, it never really feels like work, but it is requiring a new level of discipline for me to sit down and work when, I'm staring at beautiful beaches or I'm enjoying amazing company. It's no different than at home and getting myself out of the bed and going to the gym, doing the things that I don't necessarily want to do, but are going to move me closer to creating what it is I want for myself. And the impact that I'm making in the world and that I want to continue to make is important to me. So that requires that I do the things that I don't always want to do. Now, it's never about talking to clients, because I love talking to clients, but there's a lot to running a business that isn't super sexy and not really fun. And the Camino really offered a perspective on many things that have been going on in my life. And so I thought I would share some of those things with you today. And so if you watched on Instagram, and I don't know if I mentioned this in the last episode, but we had one really beautiful day. And I remember I posted on Instagram a short reel because my heart was like bursting so wide open with gratitude and joy as I was listening to songs. And this makes me emotional to think about. Music has always played such a tremendous role in my life. And I was playing songs that I used to dream about traveling. I used to dream about the life that I wanted while listening to these songs and feeling like it was so far away, and trusting that one day that those things would be mine, because I don't believe our dreams are, I don't believe the universe is punking us with our dreams. I believe we're given the dreams that we're meant to have, but we have to be able to hold the vision when it's not always easy to hold the vision. So to be walking in these beautiful fields and pathways on the Camino with the sun on my face, and it had finally gotten warm enough that I could wear a tank top, which is the only day I got to wear a tank top, and singing show tunes and just listening to these songs that again cracked me wide open, and being like, oh my God, like I am living the dream that I once was holding so gingerly, and a dream that used to cause me a lot of pain because, like I said, I was really struggling to see how it was ever going to happen in my life, and how this unfolded. I couldn't have written this story. And if I was going to write it, I wouldn't have written it the way that it unfolded. So anyways, but on that magical first day when the sun was shining, and I don't know where all my walking people had gone. This is part of the Camino, right? A lot of times you end up on your own. It's not a team sport, the Camino. So you might walk with people, but everybody kind of also takes their space. So there was time when we were walking together, and there was times when we were walking apart, and there were times when I look around and I didn't know anybody that was around me. And I got to this fork in the road, and there was a sign, which of course was not in English. And one direction I could see the beautiful river, and another direction I could see, trees and bushes and all that kind of stuff. And I looked at this other couple, and they kind of pointed in one direction, and I looked in the other direction, and I, WhatsApp people and said, like, what did you do? Where did you go? And didn't hear from anybody. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to make a call. And I went to the right instead of to the left. I didn't walk towards the lake or the river. I walked in the opposite direction. And it was such a great metaphor for life, because it really didn't matter what direction I took. Both directions led to the same outcome. Both would have gotten me to the destination that I was looking for. Both provided very different views, but ultimately brought me to exactly where I needed to be. And I was thinking about how often in life we're trying to make the right decision. We're trying to take the right path. And we overthink and we overthink. We stand and stare at that signpost, like, I could go right or I could go left. Do I go right or do I go left? What happens if I go right? What happens if I go left? We overthink and overthink and overthink, and we don't make a decision. Whereas if we just made a decision and started walking, ultimately, we're going to find our way, because I don't believe that we can get our lives right or wrong. And I don't believe that we can get to any place other than the outcome that we're meant to get to. Like, that's impossible. This is the story we try and tell ourselves. Oh, the outcome could have been different. Well, if the outcome could have been different, it would have been different. You get to where you're meant to get to when you're meant to get there. And life is about making choices and then following through on that choice and trusting. So that was one of the lessons I really wanted to sink into is, where am I dragging my feet on making decisions? Even me, where are my clients dragging their feet on making decisions because they're trying to make the right decision, or they're afraid they're going to make a wrong decision, instead of trusting that their decision is ultimately going to bring them to the outcome that they're meant to have, which is true in my own life as well. Which is also a second part of this particular lesson, and applied to the whole Camino as well, is you can be walking the same journey as someone else. And this is why I love storytelling. And this is why I use a lot of storytelling and metaphor in my coaching, because we learn through storytelling. We learn by metaphor when we can relate to something. And we could be walking shoulder to shoulder with somebody and having the exact same journey, but their perspective of that journey can be completely different. So, I saw pictures that some of the other ladies posted on the same Tuesday that I walked, and I would think, like, were they on the same path as me? Did we take the same trip? Because I didn't see those things, and they didn't have the experience that I had. Every single person in our group walking the Camino, and I would say this for every single person who ever walks the Camino or goes on any type of trek like this, their journey is going to be so unique to them. So even though thousands and thousands of people have done this pilgrimage, think about that. Every single person's journey has been uniquely their own. So although we can relate to other people, like we can understand and have empathy for where other people are at, we can say, like, I understand your journey. I've walked that journey. we also need to be compassionate and understand that nobody's journey is going to be exactly alike. And where do we try and infuse our beliefs, our frame of reality, or impose our journey or what we believe it should be like for this other person onto them when it's not even possible for them to have the same journey? So even as a coach in my business, even though I'm talking a lot in metaphors and I'm opening people up to different perspectives, even if they're going through something similar that I've gone through in the past, I also have to remember that their journey is very, very specific to them, and the answers that they need and the things that they need to let go of and the things that they need to embrace are going to be very specific and very unique to them. So if you are the kind of person who thinks you know what's best for someone else based on things you've experienced, you're trying to take away that other person's own journey and their own ability to figure it out. And you're trying to rob them of the experience that they're meant to have because you believe that your experience is the right one. And the more that we can just allow people to have their experience of life without thinking we know what's best or they should listen to our advice. And we do this often with our partners. We do this often with our children. We do this often in our businesses. So where can you release your attachment to believing that you know what's best for everybody else and trying to control that and letting everybody have the journey of their life and trust that they're going to get the lessons that they're meant to have? One of the things that I thought was so fun is on our final day, and I say this fun like tongue in cheek, which was the hardest day of the walk for me and for the ladies that were in my particular group. It was raining the hardest, the wind was the hardest. It was really a mentally and physically taxing day. Even though we were only walking, it was just the elements were really wild. And we left early in the morning. It was dark. We had headlamps on. We couldn't see where we were going. We were the only people on the path because we were trying to beat the really heavy rain. So we would look at the forecast and kind of see, okay, when is it supposed to be raining the heaviest? Let's leave early. And we try and maneuver the puddles that were like mini ponds. There were a lot of places where it just wasn't dry. And I don't know if you've ever had wet feet before or had to walk with wet feet. It's not pleasant. So I was really in the mindset of like, if I can at least keep my feet dry, I'm not going to be totally miserable. And the rest of my body, was covered up. But I really wanted to do my best to not have my feet wet. So it was a lot of like walking up the sides of things and, it was just puddle hopping and all that kind of stuff to keep my feet dry. And thinking like, oh my God, by the time the other ladies come through, there's just no way, like they're just going to be soaked. So when my client Alyssa showed up at the end of the day and I'm like, oh man, like how did you maneuver those puddles? Like, and she's like, I just walked right through them. I just walked right through them. And my inner child just thought it was so fun to just like, the only option was to walk through the puddles. And she loved every minute of it. And I kind of stood there with my jaw hanging open because for me, I'm like, yeah, there was zero joy in walking right through the mud puddles. In fact, like I said, the thought of having my feet soaking wet in my boots sounded like zero fun to me. Yet from her perspective, this was one of the best things that could ever happen as she was, really just allowing herself to be playful and having fun with it and truly surrendering to the fact like, well, if there's going to be like ponds, I may as well just wade through the ponds and get wet and just be okay with it. So again, her experience, we walked the same trail and her experience of that day and my experience of that day were totally different. And which one is right? Neither. And I really loved her sharing her perspective with me because it made me think like, where could I have maybe tried to have a little bit more fun with this? Where did I miss an opportunity to really just say like, fuck it and go all in on the puddle jumping? Because I don't really like being cold and wet. Like it just wouldn't have been my first pick. So I did the best I could. And, I talked about it on the last episode. you know, we had fun with it. We tried to make it as fun as possible if we were going to get wet. And there were so many more lessons that came out of this. So I'll just kind of carry on with some of them, and hopefully you're able to apply some of these lessons in your own life. But yeah, you can be walking the exact same path as somebody else. You can be sharing the journey, but understand that everybody is going to have their own unique perspective of their journey, and let them, and don't try and take that away from them, and don't try and force your perspective on them. And also stay open to the fact that there's other perspectives than the one that you're having. And where can you open yourself up to maybe more puddle jumping in the future? Maybe more puddle jumping will be in my future. If I'd been wearing my gum boots, sure thing, I'd go through the puddles. Storms are inevitable in life. And I think that we need to normalize this more, because in today's world, we're really, you know, there's this like high vibe. Everybody's got to be high vibe and don't think negatively, and, you know, move your attention into positive things, and don't get stuck in your emotions. And we are here as, you know, I believe spiritual beings to have a human experience. And part of the human experience is experiencing contrast. We have to have contrast. We have to have the dark to experience the light. We have to have the wet to experience the dry. We have to have the storms to experience the peace and the calm. We need that contrast. And storms in life are inevitable. You're not going to be able to bypass lifing you. And it doesn't matter how much work you do on yourself, you are still going to experience joy and pain and grief and ecstasy. You're gonna experience the whole range if you allow yourself. Or you can, you know, numb out and try and live in the beige zone, which is the thing I move my clients out of, because I want you to have an extraordinary experience of life. But that means you've got to be willing to be with the quote unquote negative as much as you want to be in the positive. And you can't always be in the positive. So you can always be looking at things as a lesson and what is here for me to learn. I think that that's a positive thing. And embrace that part of that learning comes from being with the uncomfortable feelings that maybe you don't want to feel, that you've spent most of your life trying to avoid. So, you know, one of the big things that was really apparent to me, and has been really apparent on this entire trip, is, you know, storms in life are going to happen. Surround yourself with people who are willing to walk into those storms with you. They can't stop the storm. They can't save you from the storm. They can't walk the storm for you. But to look around and see that you are surrounded by people who are choosing to be there with you side by side, or, you know, in front of you or behind you, you know, pull that circle of people in tight. Make sure you have those people in your world, because when those storms hit, you want to know that those people are going to strap on their boots and their ugly yellow raincoat that you make them buy at the dollar store. And they're going to be like, okay, let's do this. And I am so grateful for the people who have weathered this season of my life with me, who weathered the Camino with me, and who have weathered the storms of this, like I said, the season of my life, who have been by my side, from, you know, colleagues, coaches, therapists, family, friends. You know, keep that inner circle tight, and spend time in your life investing in those people. Be there for them, and then allow them to be there for you. There was a period of time in my life way back in the day where I didn't want anybody to know that things were going wrong in my life. In fact, I remember when my hubby first went to rehab, and I told no one. My clients didn't know. I told everybody he was away on a business trip. I didn't let anybody see that I was like dying and going through this really hard time in my life, except for one friend. And when things unraveled in my life last year, I really allowed myself to be fully supported, and am just so grateful that I've done this work that allows me to be open and to be vulnerable, that I don't have to armor up and pretend like I've got my shit together, not even with my clients. I don't do that with my clients either, because how can I ask them to be more open and vulnerable and teach them that that is their ultimate superpower and strength if I'm doing the opposite? So I have to live in integrity with my work. So I let my clients see what's going on in my world and let them see that even after all these years of work, things can still feel really hard, and I'm still going to weather storms, and I'm not just going to walk through it like with rainbows coming out of my butt. I cannot escape the human emotions any more than my clients can. Even though I've got so many tools and I can probably navigate it with a little bit more ease and awareness, it doesn't mean that the pain is any less. It just means I've got more tools to support me through it. And that's what I try and give my clients. But that being surrounded by people who love me, want the best for me, trust me to make the best decisions for me, who are not interested in taking away my pain. So this is going back to not, fixing people or trying to tell them what to do or create their experience of life. People who were not interested in taking my pain away, but they were more than willing to stand with me in my pain. That's powerful. And that's ultimately what I provide my clients with. I stand with them in their pain. And I know that they are more than capable of weathering that pain and finding their way through it. Because that's the other thing about storms, is there's no way out but through. There's no way out but through. So if we just kept putting one foot in front of the other, we knew we were going to make it to our dry haven, and then we would have a reprieve, and then we'd, go back out in the storm the next day. There's a whole other layer of this that I'm also going to talk about in this episode, but it's just so important that you allow yourself to have those people in your life, and that you invest the time and energy into yourself and into creating these relationships, because it just goes a long way in knowing you're going to be okay on those days that maybe you feel like you're not going to be okay. Because I know I've had those days where I've questioned, like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to make it through this? So, my higher self, that inner knowing, knows I'm going to be fine. But man, even walking the Camino, in the moments where I was like, this is awful. And when I'd look up and I'd see, my best friend up ahead of me, and I'd see, one of my clients and dear friends behind me, I'd be like, okay, we can do this. We can do this. And that's been my whole life for the past, year and a bit. There's no point fighting, right? There's no point fighting the storms in our life. That doesn't actually make them go away. Me yelling at the weather, cursing out the weather, isn't going to make it any different. You get to choose how you want to look at those storms. You get to choose the perspective that you want to have around them. Once we resigned ourselves to the fact that we were going to be walking in the rain, it was like, okay, well, we don't know how many days we're going to be walking in the rain. So can we just make this the most positive experience that we can, while also acknowledging that it was okay to say, like, it sucks too, right? Like, I would have much preferred a dry, sunny walk. And then I gave myself what I needed on those days to make it more enjoyable. So sometimes I was in silence, and sometimes I was like, we are putting on music so that I can feel that joy from inside my body to combat what's going on out here. And just reminding myself to, lift my head and enjoy the scenery, because on the first day where it rained a lot, we were so focused on getting to that next destination that I don't even think we lifted our heads up. So going back to what I said around other people had this, these pictures, and I was like, were you on the same path as us? I really had to ask myself how often I put my head down because I'm just trying to get through something that I don't like. And I miss the experience of looking up and taking in the view along the journey, because it's not a journey I want to be taking. But there's still beauty along that journey, even if it's one of the storms of life. So where can you look up? Lift your head, because life isn't about pushing through and keeping your head down. It truly is about embracing the journey, even the sucky parts of the journey, even the parts of the journey that are really hard. It doesn't mean that you stand still and just have a tantrum, but you can look up while you're walking through it and appreciate the view. And that was really, on the first day of rain, that was not what it was for me. And I really had to reflect on how much I was looking at my feet that day, because it wasn't a very exciting walk, because it was just, like I said, wet. And I was looking at the ground the whole time, and I missed out on the views. So anyways, I think I'm going to leave it there. There's so many more lessons that I want to share. So I will do another episode very similar to this, where I'm just kind of throwing out some random thoughts on travel, on lessons, on metaphors, on things I've discovered as I've moved about the world, things I've discovered about myself, things I've discovered about other people, and just completely different perspective shifts on the culture in North America versus the culture over here in Europe. Even that has been so eye-opening. And that's what I love about adventure. And that's what I love about travel. And I'm like a baby. I'm like a baby traveler. Like, I realize, like, oh, I've led such a sheltered travel life. And even now it's, this is my first week by myself. I've been with people for the past 3 weeks, and this is my first week on my own, and it's been quite disruptive as well. I don't speak the language. It's kind of an isolate. It's really interesting, because I love being on my own, but this is like, it's almost like an isolation feeling as opposed to being on my own feeling, because when I'm out and about, I don't understand what anybody's saying. I can't have a meaningful conversation with anybody because we don't really understand the language. There's that language barrier. So I'm using Google Translate and all this stuff. Like, I'm pulling out the tools. I'm being like the awkward kid. I'm just allowing myself to be a learner. But it's just so fascinating to even see what I'm learning about myself in this week. And this kind of feeling of being alone, which I love, and at the same time feeling isolated, which I don't love. And how much connection we need it to thrive as humans. I need it to thrive as a human. And that has really been eye-opening for me as I continue to explore what I want in my business, what I want for you, my listeners, for you, my clients, for you, my friends, how I can facilitate deeper connection with you, right? A deeper connection with yourself and deeper connection with other people, because we do actually need that to live a fulfilling life. We are not meant to be here in isolation. We are meant to have this interdependence on one another. And we as humans are pack animals. We need connection, and we can see the fallout of what happened during the pandemic when we were all isolated. So, hats off to anybody who's listening, whose family has ever relocated countries to begin again and not know the language and not know the culture. Like, I have so much more respect for that now and reverence for it, because I've never been in a situation where I haven't been with somebody. Right. So even the past 3 weeks when I've been traveling, I've been with people who speak the language, or I've been with somebody who is also an English speaker. So even if we can't understand everybody else, we can understand each other. Really powerful to experience that sense of isolation that comes with not fitting in, not belonging, not being understood, and not understanding. That's just that's probably a podcast episode on its own. So anyways, having said all that, I wanted to remind you that I do have an upcoming retreat in Whistler in September. I believe it's the 8th to the 14th. Don't quote me on that. I'll have my team put it in the show notes. We have one space available. And if you've been following my journey on Instagram, or you've been listening to the podcast and you're feeling that pull that you want something more in your life, that things aren't feeling aligned. And the best way I can describe it is it's like an integrity misalignment. Like, you know, something isn't fitting and you are a person of high integrity, yet you feel out of integrity with yourself. And you're wanting to be in a room with other women who are willing to open up and share their lives and their experience and their perspective, so that we can all grow together and we can have these phenomenal conversations that are going to propel us and propel you into your life in a new way. Maybe it's you go home with a new perspective on your world. But what I do know is that when you combine deep connection with a brand new environment, magic happens. This trip has been magical for me. And it's not about the places that I've been. It's about the people that I've been with and the experiences that I've had with them while being in a different environment and seeing the world. And I am beyond excited to be able to give that to my people in this retreat in Whistler. Everything is going to be fully curated for you. You literally just show up. We're going to pick everybody up. We're going to move you all up to Whistler. And the entire week has been planned out with exciting adventures, lots of nurturing and connected activities. So it's going to be, you know, a combination of rest and play and getting out of your comfort zone. Amazing food. We're bringing in a private chef who's going to be taking care of all of our culinary needs, all healthy, of course, because, you know, it's me. So we're not going to be eating donuts. In one of the most spectacular places in the world. Whistler is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And in September, it is, I mean, it's next level. So if you've been considering joining us, don't waste any time, because there's that one spot left. So we will post the link in the show notes to put down your deposit, or you can reach out directly to me. I will put my email in the show notes, and we can have a conversation to see if it's the right fit for you, if this is in fact exactly what you need right now for your own personal growth and transformation. And you're going to have one-to-one time with me as well, pre and post retreat. So don't miss that opportunity to sign up so that you can start experiencing the world in a whole new way and expanding your level of consciousness and stepping into curating and creating the life that you really want to be living, not the one that you think you should be living, and really getting back into integrity with yourself, or beginning again with that integrity piece with yourself. So on that note, I will leave you with those thoughts and reflections, and I will catch you on the next episode, where I will share more lessons and more perspectives that I know is going to change how you're seeing your own world. So if this episode was helpful, please don't forget to leave a rating and review. And I would love to hear from you. Drop into social media, either on Instagram or Facebook. Let me know what about this episode resonated with you, what lessons you took away from it. I'm always interested to know your thoughts. And until next time, take good care of you. And I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks so much for being here.